Pedagogy for Justice and Peace. My name is Kathrin Winkler, and I'm honored to facilitate today's webinar. I would like to begin with an acknowledgement that I am in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral territory and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people, a territory covered by the 1725 Treaties of Peace and Friendship. With this acknowledgement, I would like to express solidarity with the Mi'kmaq lobster fisher folk whose property and livelihood has recently been brutally attacked here in Nova Scotia, Canada. Wherever we are on this call, let us evoke peace and healing for the injustice that is swelling up around us. In this plea for peace, I'm grateful to introduce today's panel, to welcome all of you near and far to our virtual space, and to give you a brief overview of the day. A thank you to the Sahariya Adivasi girls who made the banner behind me while attending the Kasturba Gandhi Ashram in Shiopur. I would also like to extend a special welcome to Ella Gandhi, who is joining us today from South Africa. This is the second in a series of 3 webinars, Educating for Justice Through Peace. The third webinar takes place on November 29th. Today, there are 2 sessions. The first, Practicing Critical Pedagogy for Justice and Peace, features 3 30-minute workshops by educators from Canada, the United States, and India. After a 15-minute musical interlude, the second session, Creating Peaceful Schools and Classrooms in the COVID Era, will follow. The 2 sessions will run from 8:30 a.m. to 12:45 Eastern Time and 6 to 10:15 IST. Echoes of Paulo Freire and Education Through and for Liberation continue to hold promise as they are reignited today. I'm honored to introduce this distinguished and dedicated panel of educators. The classroom is our world, and the world is our classroom. Please put questions in the chat, and I would also like to remind you that if the session the session will be recorded, and please exercise your preference regarding video on or off. There will be 3 presentations of 30 minutes, followed by 20 minutes for questions at the end of the 90 minutes. So again, I encourage you to participate, and all questions are welcome in the chat. Now, let's welcome Dr. Luis Huerta Charles, an associate professor of multicultural education and critical pedagogies at New Mexico State University, and an invited professor at the Instituto de Pedagogia Crítica, Institute of Critical Pedagogy in Chihuahua, Mexico. The title of this session is Path of Conscientization, and you may have to say it more clearly. Thank you, Luis.
Thank you, Kathrin, for the introduction, and welcome everybody. Thank you for being here with us this day. I will start sharing, well, I don't know if I can share my screen. Do you think that I will be ready? I will be able to share my screen?
Yes, Louis, you'll be able to share your screen.
Great, thank you. Because I don't see my,
Okay. Are you not able to see share screen option?
Yeah, but it's just showing me the whiteboard, the desktop, your desktop or my desktop, but not mine. Maybe you make me co-host for a couple of minutes, for 20 minutes.
We've made you co-host for the entire day.
Oh, then I don't know why I cannot see it.
The virtual classroom is like the actual classroom. There are always a few technical challenges.
Sam, I cannot find the way to share it here. And I'm sorry I apologize for this technical issue. Oh, I saw it now. Oh, thank you. I'm sorry for that. Well, I wanted to start my kind of dialogue today with you all, trying to point some ideas that I got from different experiences through my career trying to help my students, which are most of them educators in the school, in service on pre-service teachers that are going to be working in the public schools. But also, when I work in the communities, I try to do this kind of work with the parents, mom and dad, that are sharing with me time during the day, because this is important. It's an important process in order to take a stand and to act in the world. I would love to start with this quote from, I took it from Edward Said, Orientalism book, because this quote is not in the English translation of Antonio Gramsci's Prison Notebook. That's interesting. It's in the Italian version, but it's not in the English version. And Edward Said pointed out in his book, Orientalism. And this is the important part for me. The starting point of critical elaboration is the consciousness of what one really is, and is knowing oneself as a product of the historical process to date, which has deposited in you an infinity of traces without leaving an inventory. And that is so powerful for me in my classes, because my students most of the time came to the class without having a clear awareness what they're getting into. They are expecting to receive, for example, methods for teaching multicultural kids when we are teaching multicultural education. And I started to help them to deconstruct themselves a little bit in order to be aware to who they are. Therefore, for me, the best alternative to acquire critical awareness of what we really are is where we're standing regarding our world and ourselves on it, is to elaborate our own self-inventory. That is, for me, the beginning of the process of being aware of who we really are. Our self-inventory must be elaborated as a process. Freire said that no one educates him or herself. The individuals educate together in communion. And this is so powerful, because we need to rebuild that kind of solidarity and community sense in our students, in the individuals in the world, specifically in this westernized world, when students are subjected to a vision of reality that is shifting every single minute when they are accessing internet. For example, the creation of a reality that is superficial exists in our world. My students, when I ask them if they remember from history when the Second War happened, they have no clue about the time. The only thing that they remember is Hitler, but nothing else. No, who fought against him, who conquered the world, these kind of things. But they are kind of historically, they are omniscient in terms of historic events. We have to achieve conscientization in order to participate in the world, but specifically in the creation of a more socially just world. Freire used to say it, a less ugly world. Conscientization then focuses on achieving an in-depth understanding of the world. It includes taking action against the oppressive elements in one's life that are illuminated by that understanding. We must acquire the ability to intervene in reality in order to change it. That is the whole point of the process of becoming aware, becoming consciousness, achieving conscientization, to be aware where we're standing up in terms of the world and ourselves, and how can we act on the world in order to change it. I love, even though in some paper that I put this Freire idea, the editors came back to me and said, are you sure you want to put ugly? Freire said it. Freire said, less ugly word, and I love it because the word is really ugly this time. It is important to be aware of ourselves, but that is not enough. We have to be able to move from awareness to becoming an activist in constructing a more socially just world, even with our own and small actions at the beginning. Because sometimes the students think, if I do this thing in my classroom counts, Absolutely, because you are affecting or changing the life of the kids plus the kids' families. One activity I developed with educators as a starting point of the process of conscientization is the elaboration of our own cycle of socialization. This cycle of socialization is not my idea, is Bobby Harrell's idea. And I want to share with you the picture of it, and I want to walk you through, and I will ask you a couple of questions at the end of describing the cycle of socialization. This is it. Something that is important for my students to recognize that at the beginning, we are born in a world that has some rules, mechanics in place. We get into our family's environment most of the time. We have limited information, maybe no information or misinformation. We got biases, stereotypes, some prejudice. We learn some part of the history from our own family, habits and tradition. But this first socialization that we receive is taught on a personal level by our parents, our family, the relatives, the teachers, people we love and trust. Shape of expectation, norms, values, rules, models of way to be, and source of dream. Then we add to the cycle of socialization. If you can think on this situation, just think on yourself. Where were you born? How was your family structure? What you learned from them? What kind of habits, values, the stereotypes, prejudice you learned from your own family? And let me tell you, thinking of my own self, I was born in a family that was kind of combined of two different worlds. The Catholic world, because my mom was so Catholic at that time, she changed later on in her life to a different religion. But at the same time, I was growing up with my grandma, and my grandma was a healing, something that we call curanderas in Spanish, because she saw the world in different ways, working with some remedies to help people heal. And my mom didn't like that. I grew up in that kind of environment, being myself a top Catholic, but I really believe more on my grandma's perspective of the world. But I learned a lot of prejudice. At that time, I was educated as a macho man, the man of the house. Even though I was the second man of the house because my brother was older than me, I was a macho man. I was the man of the house too. And it was incredible to see, to realize for me, to see how my sister was so angry when I was acting as a macho. Little boy acting as a macho, if he finished eating and leave the plates on the table and move away. And they had to pick them up and wash for me. It was something interesting to realize now that I'm older. I realize on those times, and I think I was kind of enjoying it because that was one of the privileges that I have at home. And I learned many prejudice in that way about gays, lesbian, women. I had to deconstruct those kind of experience that I learned from my own house. Think of your own experience if you can. And then the second level of institutionalization, the socialization that we have is the institutional one and the cultural one. Here, for example, they reinforce many of the messages that we learn in this first socialization. Why? Because our own parents have been subjected to this kind of socialization, and they bombarded us with a lot of information through the institutions. And let me tell you, the institution that Harold pointed out at churches, schools, television, legal system, mental health institution, medicine, and businesses. Culture, we learn practice. We learn a lot through the lyrics of the songs. Songs are not innocent. One of the songs that I share today for our panel is the Curse of the Malinche, because we learn in that way in Mexico, because it's my country of origin. Through language, mass media, this is one of the worst process for me, the mass media. How to deconstruct it with the teacher is incredible. hard to do. Patterns of thoughts. This is done in an unconscious and conscious level. Just let me tell you one example here about the media. One of my students in one of my master classes, she was missing a lot of assignment until I called her and say, hey, you have missed 3 assignments now. And she told me, I have an issue because I had to be in the gym. And I said, the gym? Why the gym? If you are becoming teacher and you're going to be working with kids and you need to, no, it's my goal in my life is to be part of the bachelorette. And if you don't have an idea what a bachelorette is, it's a program when they select women to participate in a show when they try to do everything to get married at the end. That was her goal in life. So deconstructing the media's teaching that we receive is so powerful, even with adults. She was 22 and her aspiration were to become the bachelorette for the next session. So she has to spend several hours in the gym to keep the shape of her body to be selected. It was totally absurd for me, but makes sense for her. I had to help her to deconstruct that experience that she had received from the media. So all these processes that is listed here in this arrow are kind of reinforcement that we receive. You act in a different way. For example, when I learned to cook at home, my friends in the barrio where I was growing up, in the lower class barrio, they used to criticize me. They call me names. Immediately they call me gay, for example, because I cook at home. This stigmatization that you receive, you act different, is part of the reinforcement that we receive from the society too. So if you have privilege, you enjoy it, you don't want to move on. We have sometimes rewards or punishment, as I mentioned. We live some process of discrimination, or we felt empowered to continue doing what we do. But these levels of socialization take us to this stage, which is kind of calling the result of the process, because we live in dissonance. For example, in my own experience, when I learned to cook, I was in constant conflict with my friends outside home because they called me names. And we have to fight every single day when they call me names. Sometimes we stay silent. You get dehumanized. They take away, this process take away your humanity, trying to transform you in something, or you becoming something that is not good for the other people. Like I was telling you, when I was the macho at home, the man of the house, I was dehumanizing my sisters too, even my mom, but my mom considered that was her role. And I accepted that role at that time. I changed when I was 13 years of age. No, I enjoy it from being 5, 6 years old to 13 until I realized what I was doing. Sometimes we feel guilty. We have kind of ignorance of the reality, as my student that I was telling that she wanted to become the next bachelorette. We also have violence, crime. We internalize a specific pattern of power. But we cannot act immediately to get out of this process, because at the core of ourselves, we are embedded with fear, ignorance, confusion, and insecurity. But then I ask my students, when you get into this process and you realize who you are, what would you do? Would you do nothing? Continue the way it is? You're going to go again, and again through the cycle of socialization with yourself, and when you get older, with the people around you. You have kids or not, your own children, etc. You're going to be reproducing the same pattern of action. Or you have the decision or the possibility of jumping out of that cycle, stopping and saying, I don't want to feel the fear. I don't want to feel scared. I don't want to be confused. If that was ignorance interacting with other people in my life, I learned that the way I was acting wasn't the best way for the other people. Interacting with other people, that is why I told you about Frederick Communion. They helped me to realize that my actions were oppressing somebody else. At the level that you want to think, it doesn't need to be from the top government down or from the system down. In our own houses, we oppress other people in our own houses. So when I take that decision, interacting with other friends and other individuals that helped me to realize that my world needed to be shaped from the root, not just from the top, I had to went through my own self-inventory. What made me to be the person that I am at this moment, but when I did it the first time, when I was 13 or 14 years of age. What made me to act like this person? And I started to deconstruct many things. I didn't have this language at that time, but I was doing actions to realize that I didn't want to be affecting my sister or abusing my grandma and my mom with my just action of not doing anything because I was the man of the house, for example. That brought me into a level of thinking about women as a second-class citizen. So that's a whole process that we need to go. But at that time, when you realize that you need to act in that world that you are living, that is when you jump out and follow that direction for change arrow. We change, raise consciousness, interrupt what we are doing, any kind of discrimination and oppression, educate ourselves and other people, and also take a stand. That's the most important part. I don't want my students just to be aware. I want them to act. I don't want them to be aware and being witness of discrimination and oppressive act and don't say a thing. I want them to become activists in the sense that they are aware of the necessity of changing our world for a better place. This is, in general terms, what I used to do in my class. Obviously, my classes take me one class or two classes to dialogue with my students and working on this and the experience they have. And I don't know exactly how much more time I have, but I want to ask you, I'm going to be silent now, but I want to give you 5-7 minutes to think about yourself. You don't need to talk about the process here. I want you to think, if you were in this stage when you have to make a decision, would you continue with your cycle of socialization, reproducing it, as the diagram said, reproducing your status quo and the society status quo? Or would you be willing, taking the risk of moving for change? Think a little bit and share your thoughts in the chat, or if someone or a couple of you want to open the mic and talk. I don't know, Raya, what is the best way to do it, or Kathrin. But I want to give them 5-7 minutes to think a little bit about that.
We have about 8 minutes, so if there is anyone who'd like to share, please use the chat. There is a question, Luis, about power, imbalance of power, and where do you see this in the circle?
So, say the question again, Kathrin.
The question is about power and the imbalance of power. So in this dynamic, I don't see, how do you see power over someone as playing a role?
generally, the power, the imbalance of power is affecting us. When we internalize the processes, we impose our power on others. Power is not just coming from the top down. I want you to think, all of you to think, that even in our family and closest connection that we have, we impose power relationship on somebody else in our own home. As I was telling in my own story, when I didn't pick up my plate and put it into the kitchen and wash it, that was a power action over my sisters, because they yell and say things and don't be lazy. But then my grandma said, shut up and do your job, and do your job. You know, I didn't impose directly, but I did. Through my grandma.
Thank you. And here's another question from Annie Luke. Luis, share some advice to approach these difficult conversations with family who have socialized us in a particular way. So family.
It's never easy. Never easy. And most of the time happening with a confrontation. In my experience, was a confrontation specifically because I stopped believing on the church, for example. Because I saw different patterns even from the church, because I was an altar boy at that time. I say, I don't want to continue being part of this. But that's another story. But when I came home and I said, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that, my mom was, what's going on with you? And in my student example that I had collected through the time, they suffer in order to dialogue with the family. And most of the time, they learn that religion is constraining them. Facing that is a whole, how can I say that, a very complicated process. But something that I used to talk to my students is, when you are secure that you don't want to continue being the person that you are, you have to take the risk. Sometimes family reacts in a positive ways. Sometimes they don't. And like, for example, one of my students, I don't know if you can believe this, it was so hard for me. He said, I want to come out of the closet. It was so complicated because it was his whole identity. He said, at this moment, I don't want to continue being a person hiding what he really feels and how he really knows. It was so hard. The family reacted negatively at the first moment, but when we continued talking, he got more elements to break the barrier with the family down. That was a fantastic experience for my personal experience with that student. But it's complicated at the beginning. But what I tell my student is, if you are secure, you are sure that you are not going to continue reproducing the status quo, it's better to take the risk to talk to the people.
Thank you, Luis. Other
Thank
questions?
You.
There is a comment from Urvashi for women. Most of our struggles are with our families. They certainly begin there. And I also would like to ask, in terms of allyship, this seems to be an individual process, but, or the diagram indicates an individual process, but we don't walk this path alone. How would you speak to that?
Absolutely. Using the classroom, for example, when I asked if someone want to share, because not everybody wants to share in the classroom because it's a very private process. When one or two decide to share with the students, they receive very positive comments. That's the beginning for me of creating alliances, solidarity, support. We don't do it by ourselves, as Freire said. We always do in communion. When I changed, it was because I had conversation with different people, and they made me see things in different ways. I didn't realize at that time the influence of those conversations in my own process, but they have a lot of impact in my life. So when my students, even though they are adults, they are not 13, 14 years old, They are adults, some of them are in-service teachers, and they question themselves. They found that kind of solidarity with the other ones and start sharing in private their own stories. And they create alliances to support each other too. And then they move to create alliances. For example, in the last semester, they create alliances to establish a kind of food distribution process in the schools. It was very, very interesting. And I pointed out how we create communities of solidarity among ourselves, because we cannot do it by ourselves.
Thank you so much, Luis. If there are no other questions at this time, I just want to encourage you that the chat is open, and at the end, it'll give you some time to think maybe and come back to this presentation. And I'll just continue now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our second session, entitled Engaging Students in Feminist Critical Dialogues, is led by Urvashi Sahni, a social entrepreneur, women's rights activist, and educationist who has been active in the field for more than 3 decades. She is a leading expert in school governance, curriculum reform, and teacher training, with a special focus on girls' education and gender equality. Her initiatives have impacted more than 100,000 teachers and 5 million children, most of whom are girls from disadvantaged communities. Thank you, Dr. Sahni, and welcome.
Thank you so much, Kathrin, and thank you, Luis. I so enjoyed your presentation. Thank you so very much for that. And thank you, Jagat, for inviting me and for giving me an opportunity to share our work. Actually, Luis, you're going to find that I will be, it resonated so much because I think we share the same inspiration, which is Paulo Freire, that everything that you said resonated, and you'll find some of that in my presentation. So what I'm going to do for the time that I have, I'm going to talk about how we actually help to conscientize, to use Freire's terminology, in girls in classrooms. And I'm going to focus on a particular piece that we did actually with an example. I have 2 lovely videos. I wish I could show you the whole lot, but I've taken clips of that. And trying to deconstruct and actually conscientize girls about the concept of honor and how it is almost weaponized to limit them, to kill them, to violate them in several ways, and definitely to imprison them, and how the girls moved to an understanding of it. So in the time that I have, I'm going to, let me not waste any more time, but just to move straight on to that. I'm going to share my screen.
Papuya? Oh, pupuya mai. Hanya, yeah.
So I come from India and Uttar Pradesh, and that's where I'm talking from. And thank you, Reva, for being sensitive about the time. It's 6:30 here. Uttar Pradesh is much in the news these days. It's one of the most backward states, and mainly for the awful crimes against women. They have hit the spotlight recently because of some very gruesome, brutal gang rape, which was also a caste war. And then suddenly more has come to light. And Uttar Pradesh leads India in crimes against women with 15% of all the crimes. It's also been declared as one of the most dangerous places for girls. And for today, I don't want to go through all the gory statistics, except to focus on the many forms of violence that honor takes in India. In terms of honor killings, especially when girls marry out of caste, when they elope, when they dare to fall in love and marry without their parents' permission. I'm going to, my example comes from Prerna School and our work with that. We decided that education and empowerment didn't have a necessary correlation, and that if you wanted to be empowering, well, then you have to empower education and you have to transform it. So this is how we defined empowerment, that becoming aware of one's subordination and analyzing its structural causes. perceiving oneself as an autonomous, equal person worthy of respect, and acting from that belief to overcome one's marginalization, developing voice and agency. So very much, in fact, I call this developing a feminist consciousness, and also in Freirean terms, trying to conscientize and desocialize our girls from the patriarchal, very confining, sexist socializing that they receive from their families, from their schools, from society. Again, Louise, I think you'll see some resonances that we really believe that the goal of all teaching and learning is to enable students to find answers to the central question, who am I and what is my relationship with the universe and others in it? We have put in place a critical feminist pedagogy, and that is drawing upon Freire's critical pedagogy and then layering on it feminist thought. We believe with bell hooks that classrooms are radical spaces of possibility, and a lot of the conscientization can be done in classrooms. We hope that students understand the concept of the social and political ideology in which they live their lives, in this case patriarchy, and how it shapes their lives. When they understand that this is human-made, it's historical, it's social, it was constructed, humanly it can be reconstructed. So we have built our whole, care is very important to us, our whole organization and our schools, the universe of care. And we focus on developing the self, that's the goal, as a person worthy of respect, and to develop a sense of home in the world, and this idea comes from bond really. And you do this in dialogues based on respect and care with each other. So I want to move straight on to my example. What had happened when this conversation took place? One of our students, Arti's sister, had eloped, and her parents had decided to write her off. They said that we don't even want to file a missing persons report because she's dead to us. She's defiled the honor of the family. So I asked them, did she tell you that she was in love with this man? They said, yeah. It is all very clear that what question, of course, she's not allowed to be in love with anyone. And that too, he was out of caste. He was of a lower caste. And so she had eloped. And I told him, I said, actually you're responsible because when she wanted to talk to you about it, you wouldn't talk to her. But of course, he had none of that. Anyway, so we decided to talk about that. And a little later, Khushbu, this young girl, her stepsister, came back from the village because her grandmother sent her off to her father and his wife, saying that she couldn't control her anymore. And within 3 days, she was burned to death. And we believe it was an honor killing. So we had a series of critical dialogues where we would discuss try to define Izzat, which is the Hindi word, the Urdu word for honor. How it came, how did society define it, and how could we redefine it? We asked them to interview their parents and come back and say what they have to say. And then we did some drama exercises where they used verbatim comments from parent interviews, all of which you've seen the short video. The video is actually taking clips from multiple dialogues. There were 7 or 8 and those all an hour long. And then they wrote poetry individually. We believe it's a very powerful way of expressing yourself. And then we collaboratively put it together and developed a play. We curated the verbatim data, included the statements from their parents, put it in that, and it was a choreographed kind of performance, which is really lovely. I wish you could see the whole thing, but I'm going to show you a part of it. And then we presented it to the families and in various places, and it's called Izzat. So without losing much time, Janmal Jay, can I ask you to play the first video, please?
Sure.
Thank you. If you can't, I could try playing it from here too. But...
I think there's a problem with the multiple recording. You might have to stop your screen share.
Okay, I can do that.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just start screen sharing.
This is the critical dialogue video, okay? Yeah. It's subtitle?
Yeah.
Go ahead. अपनी मर्जी से कुछ करने लगती हैं तो इसमें उनको ये लगता है कि इसके घर की इज्जत गई। तो इसमें लड़कियों की मर्जी को क्यों नहीं माना जाता है? अपनी इज्जत, अपनी मर्जी से लड़कियां कुछ क्यों नहीं कर सकती? क्यों नहीं, उनको क्यों नहीं करने दिया?
दूसरे की पहचान से कहानी जाती है।
हाँ।
जैसे मायके में होगी तो अपने भाई या बाप के उससे कही जाए कि शादी के बाद कहेंगे ये इसकी पत्नी है, इसकी पत्नी, कभी उसके नाम से कोई नहीं जानता है कि लड़की है।
सोचना है कि माँ बाप इसको, इसकी परिभाषा क्या देते हैं या समाज इसकी क्या परिभाषा देता है। फिर दूसरे साइड में लिखना है कि आपकी क्या परिभाषा।
वो होता है जो उनकी तरह से ढाल ली वो, तो वो लड़की अच्छी होती है। बोलते हैं तो लड़की अपने घर की इज्जत को बनाए रखी है। आज तक इस लड़की को कोई कुछ कह नहीं पाया है, क्योंकि ये तो बेचारी घर से निकलती ही नहीं है। बेचारी कितनी अच्छी है, अपने माँ बाप की इज्जत को बनाए रखी है, इसलिए वह समाज की नज़र में सीधी सादी और अच्छी समझी जाती है। जो घर से निकलकर अपना खुद काम करती है, अपनी जरूरतों को खुद पूरा करती है, उन्हें आवारा कहा जाता है। समाज की नज़र में वह माँ बाप की इज्जत को डुबो रही है।
इज्जत जो है मतलब घूम फिर के लड़कियों पर ही आ जाती है। उनका उठना बैठना चलना बोलना हर तरह से घूम फिर के सिर्फ लड़कियां ही इज्जत।
तो तुम्हारे अकॉर्डिंग क्या लगेगा?
लेकिन आंटी मुझे ये लगता है कि हम बाहर नहीं जाएंगे तो इसमें हमारी इज्जत क्या रह जाएगी? इज्जत जैसी कोई चीज नहीं होती आंटी।
तो मतलब बाहर जाओगी, आने जाने से इज्जत नहीं जुड़ी है।
जो बोला जा रहा है कि ये काम करोगी तो इज्जत चली जाएगी, ये काम करोगी तो इज्जत चली जाएगी, हमें नहीं लगता कि ये सारे काम करने से इज्जत चली जाएगी।
पर तुम उस लड़की को गलत कहोगी जो किसी लड़के के साथ चली जाए?
आंटी मैं गलत नहीं कहूँगी, हाँ, लेकिन उसको फैमिली के बारे में भी एक बार।
आई डोंट वांट यू टू थिंक अबाउट योर फैमिली और सोसाइटी एट ऑल। वो बात आप कर चुके।
इसकी एक लिमिटेशन होती है और मेरी नज़रों में जब लड़की उस सीमा को पार करे।
कौन सी सीमा पार करे? इज्जत की परिभाषा भी शायद इसीलिए नहीं दी कि लड़कियों को कंट्रोल में रखो। अब लड़की को ये माना जाता है कि जैसे ही वो बच्चा पैदा करने लायक हो, जैसे वो सेक्स करने लायक, तो अब इसका यूज किया जा सकता है। पेरेंट्स कहते चलो शादी करो, फिर पति यूज करें।
हाँ आंटी वही तो है।
एक आदमी यूज करे, सब लोग करें। और तो अब इसका कोख भी यूज किया जा सकता है। कोख भी तैयार हो, चलो शादी करो ताकि बच्चे पैदा कर सकें। ठीक है, लेकिन क्या आप सिर्फ वही ऑल दैट यू आर? आप कुछ कर सकते हो, कमा भी सकते हो, और ये जो कोख है आपका है। सेक्स है, यौन है, तो आपकी है, तो किसी और के यूज के लिए नहीं। इट इज ऑल्सो मेंट फॉर प्लेजर। ठीक है, वो तो औरतों की प्लेजर की तो बात कोई सोचता ही नहीं।
तुमको समझ में नहीं आता है? इतना लड़कों से बात करती हो, समझ में नहीं आ रहा है कि क्या करती हो, और सब लोग देखते हैं। कितनी बार बोला है कपड़े जो है थोड़े ढीले पहना करो,
रास्ते पे जरा ठीक ठाक से चला करो और अपनी नजरें एक तरफ ही रखा करो, इधर उधर घुमाने की जरूरत नहीं है।
मुझे पता था बिल्कुल यही होगा, मुझे मालूम था बिल्कुल। अरे ओ राजू की मम्मी, अरे कुल्हाड़ी छोड़ो, नहीं ले जा बस। बताया तो था, बताई थी, तभी शादी कर दी होती तो आज ये देखा देखता।
हे राम, ये सारी उनकी माँ की गलती है। पहले तो उनके छोड़ दिया, अब उनकी बिटिया देखो क्या कर रही, कि को मुंह दिखाएंगे। यूजलेस मतलब आंटी कुछ ये लगेगा कि पैदा हुए तो तभी ठीक से नहीं, यही था कि बेटी हो गई, अब तो ये आफत हो गई। उस तरीके से फिर बहुत कोशिश किया सब ठीक करने का, घर को संभाला, सब किया, और उतना करने के बाद भी जब हमारी खुशियों की बारी आई तो माता पिता ने ये नहीं सोचा कि जिस कोख ने उससे उन्होंने बेटे को जन्म दिया है, उस कोख से उन्होंने बेटी को भी दिया है, तो हम क्या यूजलेस हैं उनके लिए? हम उनके लिए कुछ है नहीं। अगर नहीं था कोई वैल्यू नहीं रखता,
वैल्यूलेस।
उलझन होती है, घुटन होती है कि हमारी जिंदगी होने जा रही है, और अगर हमने ऐसा किसी को पसंद किया है तो मुझे लगता है हमने गलत नहीं किया है, ये हमारा हक है, क्योंकि उसके साथ उसकी फैमिली के साथ हमें जाना है, ना कि हमारी फैमिली को।
और
भगवान ने ऐसी भी कोई दुनिया बनाई होती जहाँ लड़कियों के लिए भी कोई जगह होती, जहाँ वो अपनी फीलिंग्स शेयर कर सकती, वो अपने मन का कर सकती, जो उन्हें लगता है जो सही है। क्या ये सब करना किसी लड़की को अपने लिए पसंद करना गलत था? मुझे नहीं लगता। मगर इसमें पता नहीं मेरे पेरेंट्स ने क्या सोचा, कैसे सोचा, क्या उनका कोई भी मतलब मेरे लिए कोई इमोशन नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं चाहते मेरे लिए? क्या मैं इतनी गिरी हुई हूँ, मेरी कोई वैल्यू नहीं है यहाँ पे, मेरी कोई सेल्फ रिस्पेक्ट नहीं है?
Thank you. Handing back to you, Anna.
This was a long thing, and the whole idea was, if I refer back to Louise's cycle, the idea was to, one, understand what's going on in society, how we've been socialized, how society, our families think, how they've raised us to think, how they've defined honor, and then to try and deconstruct it and to try and build their own understanding of it. And that happened when they wrote their poetry, through the dialogue, and then they did the play. I'm going to show you just the last bit of it was just a 12 or 13-minute presentation, and where this girl has just a friend who is a boy. And she gets found out, of course. She's very innocent. She's only 12 or 13, but she's hit puberty, and then what happens? So if you play the second video.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Jagat. I could actually play it from mine. My quality is really a little better, but go ahead.
Sure, please go ahead. No problem. You can do that.
No, please go ahead. Since you got the screen, go ahead and do it. those were our girls. And this was the play that, oh man, I'm trying to share my screen. Janmajaya, if you'll stop sharing, I just want to finish. I want to share my screen.
Urvashi, I'm not sharing. My sharing will stop.
Okay. Okay, so no. So I'm just going to quickly tell you a little of what happened as a result of this, that the play and this whole culture circle and the dialogues, the poetry writing, it gave them an opportunity, one, to reflect on themselves, their lives, society, the social ideology, and try to develop one of their own. And they got an opportunity to rehearse possible selves in a safe place and to provide a site for self-construction. And we think that self-expression is a way of constructing yourself. And most importantly, I think drama and the critical dialogues and it helps them internalize the freer, just like oppression helps you internalize the oppressor. So they were becoming free to feel, learning to feel indignant and angry, and learning that these feelings are legitimate. And the performance gives their feelings public expression and thereby helps them legitimize and dignify their feelings. And in so doing, they internalize the freer. And here's some of the personal impact that they said. They said, it's given me a new way. These are direct quotes from the girls, of thinking about izzat, of expressing myself, and of behaving and being. Luis, it was really our way of using education to disrupt and interrupt that whole cycle and give the girls a way of redefining things for themselves and taking action. We have a new understanding of izzat. We can deal with it now at home too. We don't wear dupattas if we don't want to. That's the way. We realize that has nothing to do with izzat. Kunti told us about her boyfriend and breakup and how this gave her the courage to face it and to actually acknowledge it to her parents. And Rama told us how she has learned to refuse marriage proposals because of this and exercise her own autonomy. And Nishu has learned to refuse societal definitions of izzat. They felt it was very important and empowering to all of them, but most importantly, they felt that they were doing something very important on stage. They felt that not only were they taking personal action, but they were actually taking social action while they were doing this, because they were hoping that their self-expression, their self-construction was helping others do the same for themselves. And they said that it's caused they gained great confidence. So I'm going to stop at that. And, if you want more examples of how we use critical feminist pedagogy in our classrooms, I've written a whole book about that, and with very, very concrete examples and real transcripts, please feel free. And I would encourage you to see the whole play that the children wrote and scripted and performed. And I don't know about you, but every time I see them dance, I'm absolutely in tears at the bravery of these girls. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Urvashi. Thank you so much. And I'm so thrilled that the links in these two conversations are woven together in some reflection in the beginning, and now to see this in reality, to see these girls and the blisters on the feet and the courage to continue the dance. Thank you so much.
Actually, I can take one question since we have another 3-4 minutes. If anybody has a question or comment, or if Luis would like to say something, I would love to hear from Luis also and anyone else.
So I think there are some questions here. I'll just go ahead and read one of those with your permission. Thank you. So this is from Sinan Kumar. What incredible work, Urvashi, and how beautiful to see the visuals of the education you offer for the girls. I was struck by the soloist's question, who am I, as the students gain freedom, courage, and understanding of their agency. Can you describe more about how you help the process in their relationships with their families?
Oh, yes. So, in fact, a lot of our parents watch these, and I've seen them crying, reduced to tears, absolutely, by these girls. And the girls perform with great power because it's so real to them. And they are actually not performing. They are talking to their parents through the medium of drama. We also talk to, our whole program actually involves critical dialogues with parents as well. Part of the interviews were meant to do that. And what we found is that's where it begins. That's the formal assignment. But the conversations don't stop there. For example, with this Sadhana child that I mentioned, the elopement, we followed it through. We followed it through with the parents. And they did learn to accept it later. And she wouldn't come back because she was afraid. She says, no, I'm not coming back because they're going to kill my husband. And they will try and disrupt the marriage. So I will not come back, but I'm glad they've at least accepted that. So we give them, and as you notice with the girls, they found the courage through that to have these conversations with their parents, the difficult conversations, very difficult conversations. And what it does is it also gives them a language, and it gives them a sense of legitimacy that what they're doing is right. It is not wrong. They don't have to feel guilty, and they can talk, they can stand their moral ground when they talk to parents. It's part of our program is every month, critical dialogues with our parents too. And over time, we have seen the difference. We have seen the difference. Not as though it doesn't happen anymore, but there is a difference. So, and to answer Anne's question about how do you have these conversations with families, these are the hardest ones. Of course they are, of course they are. But the way our girls seem to understand it actually better than all of us. And I know I've had to have these conversations, many of them, for several years with my own parents. And I know I broke their heart in some ways because I got divorced and they could never imagine that would happen. But they finally understood, and my father told me that, he understood, he came on to my side. And I think that personal battle was a very important social and political battle. So I think our girls understand that this is, like I said, they felt that they were doing very important work on that stage. They were not performing for entertainment. This was very important work. And so similarly, when they talk to their parents at home, they think that this is very important work. So they're fighting not just for their own autonomy, but also for a change in the whole social system. Because part of what we do during our critical dialogues is tell them that we are part of the social fabric. And when we shift, the world shifts. When we change, the world changes. And so we should try and change. And they see having these conversations with their parents as very important work that they need to do. And we help them.
This mic, thank you so much, Urvashi. Yes, the world changing. This is where we are for these young women. It's very powerful. I'm just going to scroll back to a question from Ila Gandhi. Thank you for the drama. Arts speak much louder than speeches and words, but my concern is that while we try to impact on the youth, we should perhaps have programs for parents as well.
Yes, Ilaji, we do. We work very hard with parents. We have large campaigns. And besides talking to them in groups and having these sorts of performances where parents are invited, and that's our way of talking to them, is that it's a safer way of talking to them. It's non-confrontational. And they get to see how their girls feel. And it's very empowering for them. And we do that. Our girls also conduct very large-scale community campaigns. As teachers, girls, all of us together. And we've had many parents join us. So yes, I agree with you. The important thing is that when you help give voice and agency to girls, and right now we're working very hard on caste, so to Dalits, we must create a safety net which will hold them when there's a backlash, and there will be a backlash. And so the safety net is provided by all of us together, which is why the universe of care is really important. That we care, they learn to care, they hold each other, and we hold them. And a lot of parents we have got on this side who, parents love their children. My father loved me. He still married me off at 17 because that's what he knew best. So we are not blaming them, but we are just saying that these are your daughters, don't you love them? And they're really asking for you to, like that Kunti said, don't they really care about me? This is what I want. So this is all about really finding a way of communicating your feelings and getting other feelings to change because you've managed to communicate. And we found drama to be such a powerful tool, such a powerful tool.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I hope that the boys' schools are having the opportunity to do similar dramatizations.
Yes. Oh, yes, with boys too. In fact, that has been our more recent work where we're working with boys. And I'm telling you, the boys have become advocates now. Now they perform together. The boys and girls perform together. And so again, that is a good, those rehearsals are a very good place for all these critical dialogues to happen. It's interwoven, the poetry writing, the drama writing, the rehearsing, the critical dialogue. And it's in this whole web, that cycle. I love that cycle, Louise. That cycle sort of, and we move from one part to the other, to the third, to the fourth, to the fifth. And even in the play, if you could see it, it really, the whole cycle, you would have been able to place it exactly where it was. The last one as social action, you know, where you learn to be, and I think from you to become personal activists, and then you become social activists. It's really the same thing. You cannot be a social activist without becoming a personal activist. And normally personal activists don't stop there. That's been my experience. That 90% of them, they just realize how important the struggle is, and they take it. And then our girls definitely have.
Thank you so much.
Now we're working with caste, which I'm telling you is a much harder battle, much harder battle. And we are hoping to use critical pedagogy in the same way with Savarnas, which is, you know, members of the dominant caste, and with Dalits. Just like we do with boys and girls, with Dalits, identity. That I am a person worthy of respect, I'm equal, and I don't care how society has defined me. And in this whole place, the universe, it is my home. It has the duty to be my home, and I have a right to make it my home. And with Savarnas, showing them how they just, you know, taken up all that space, and they have rendered them homeless. They have disenfranchised them with centuries of centuries. And so how are they going to, what are they going to do to welcome them? What are they going to do? How are they going to change? So that is something we are working very hard with. And it is much harder, I have to say. So I always thought that patriarchy was in the DNA of people. I think caste goes much deeper. It goes much deeper. And so next time round, I'm hoping we'll talk about that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And we will continue our journey. There's no other choice, whether the feet are blistered or not. We move on now, thank you, to the third session. And this session takes us into a virtual dimension in this virtual dimension. So I would like to introduce Dr. Joe Cloutier. He is here to take us on this journey in the final workshop entitled Critical Education in the Virtual World. Joe has worked with Edmonton's Indigenous and other marginalized youth in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, for the past 30 years as a popular theater worker, teacher, and administrator. Impacted by early years of poverty and a sense of marginalization, then later studies in peace education has furthered Joe's interest in developing the Inner City Drama Project. So I invite Joe to take it away. Thank you.
Unmute yourself, Joe.
Golly, that's a good start. Thank you, Louis, and thank you, Urvashi. It's an honor to be among you, and so early as well. Now, I hope I can get all this technology working. It wouldn't cooperate for me last night, virtually or in reality. But then there's an argument about virtual reality. Is it reality or is it not? I mean, we're virtual, and we're all here now, and we're being impacted by by all of these discussions and feeling it ourselves as well. So that's one of the things that kind of drew me to working in the virtual world. So I'd like to say, I guess I need to screen share now. So I need to pick my one, and there we go. I got lots of screens. So how's that? No, I don't want to screen share that. Golly. I need to unscreen share it. How do I do that? Stop screen share.
Yes, stop screen sharing will let you stop, but you're sharing your window, so you can open up the window you want to show us.
Yeah, I just can't. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, now we are set to go in a moment. I just lost everything I was going to do. Okay. I'd like to thank you, first of all, for the opportunity to present this critical education project. But before we begin the critical education section, I'll talk a little bit about our organization, just to kind of place things in perspective. First of all, it's the Inner City Youth Development Association, and it's an umbrella organization for the Inner City Youth Engagement Program and Inner City High School. The organization grew out of our work as the Inner City Drama Project, and we were using some popular theater and in some places called Theater of the Oppressed to work with youth in inner city Edmonton. So how it works is the Youth Engagement Program contacts youth at the street level. We kind of reach out and we provide educational opportunities, counseling, food, transportation, advocacy, and other supports. The goal is to bridge the youth to inner city high school and provide necessary supports as they make their way through school. On average, we'll have in the area of 150 marginalized, urban, indigenous, and other youth registered in our programs. They're a mobile population, they avoid formal institutions, and are not used to being in a building for extended periods of time. We have breakfast and lunch on site 5 days a week. We have a food bank, try to have clothing, especially winter clothing. Winter temperatures can drop as low as -20 or -30 at night and lower on occasion. Oh, don't mention it, eh? Being on the street without proper clothing in those temperatures is dangerous. We have social workers, youth workers, the court worker, and teachers on staff. But before I go on, I think the term marginalized urban indigenous youth as it refers to this program requires some explanation. So the youth in this project are between 15 and 24 years of age. 80 to 90% are indigenous, and 72% of them have had contact, and that was just like last year's statistics, have had contact with the children's services. What that means is they've been apprehended from or unable to live with their parents. They're sometimes in foster care, group homes, where they're often abused, living in unsafe, unstable accommodation, or actually on the street. On average, 5 to 10 of our youth at any one time are homeless and stay in shelters, coffee shops, walk the street, ride the bus if they can, whatever they can do to get into some shelter of some kind. Most have previously dropped out of or been expelled from other schools before coming to this program. Many have built up anger because of the way the world has treated them. Some are involved in the negative aspects of street life. Over 90% have had contact with the justice system. The roots of these problems reach deep into their colonial history. And I'll give you an example of some of the conditions they face as I now need to go to screen share. And let's see. And here we go. So, whoops, no, that's not, I'm losing my, somehow I gotta move this over here. Okay, here we go, I can do it this way. 1, 2, they face family dysfunction, poverty, substance abuse, neglect, and suicide. It's all part of their lives and their background. The alarming rate of suicide among Indigenous youth adds to the immediacy of the problem. In a Health Canada report, Indigenous males between the ages of 15 to 24 years experience a suicide rate 5 times the non-Indigenous male rate. And for Indigenous females, the rate is 7 times that of non-Indigenous females. And we'll see what's happening here. I've got, maybe I can do it that way. No, I can't. I've got okay, I'll just have to do that, which I didn't want to do. According to the Canadian Department of Justice, Indigenous youth between the ages of 12 and 17 in secure custody are shamefully overrepresented in the justice system. They form 7% of the general population. Well, these things vary from which part of Canada you're in, but as an average, yet account for 29% male and 44% female youth between 12 and 17 years in custody. These numbers are national average. The rates are higher in the Western provinces where we're located. So now it's this, so what I was afraid of is this jumping back and forth there. Last year, just some statistics, last year, our court worker helped youth clear 47 warrants for their arrest and supervised 268 community service hours. So what that means is that instead of going to jail, the youth perform a service in the community. And our court worker advocates for them in the court. And it prevents them from going to jail and being introduced to a more hardened criminal element. During that year, our social workers helped distraught youth draft 23 suicide safety plans for the youth that were contemplating suicide or expressing suicidal thoughts. I developed this education project in the virtual world as one possible tool in mediating some of this damage. How it's mixing up is that things are being covered that shouldn't be covered. Okay, it's slowing me down, and I've got too much talking to do here. So, this project is based in the virtual world of Second Life. Now, I thought I just needed to sort of place this and explain a bit about the virtual world. Several virtual worlds exist in cyberspace and are used for various purposes, from education to gaming. Second Life is the most I can say it, I know, sophisticated of the non-game based virtual worlds. The world is created by its users, or as they are called, residents. I first encountered the virtual world of Second Life out of curiosity in early 2010. It took a few well-spaced visits before I became comfortable enough to do some exploration. As I explored, I encountered other avatars in other parts of the world. So we're working through an avatar in Second Life. I found that the more I was in world, as they say, the more I felt a sense of presence, the feeling of actually being there in the virtual world, and we're all feeling that right now, while physically in another location. I needed regular breaks from this feeling of immersion, presence, and activity. It overwhelmed my senses, and I really struggled to come to terms with that. But at the same time, I recognized and was becoming excited about the potential for education. I experimented with building in 3D, or rendering, as they say. I found people and other avatars generally helpful and collaborative. I can be a bit of an introvert in many situations. However, in the virtual world, I find myself to be more outgoing with other people. In this way, the sense of presence deepens and becomes co-presence when you're interacting. These qualities, I thought, would help our work with youth. Most are shy and hesitant to move out of their comfort zone. When you kind of grow up in that environment, there's, as you're all aware, I'm sure, the psychology of poverty, the lack of self-confidence, the buildup of aggression to prevent you from being hurt. And so and that's kind of a self-protection, but it also blocks personal development and kind of traps you in the environment that is not healthy or helpful and oppressive. My first indication of how this sense of presence in the virtual world had taken hold was I first called my avatar me, kind of referred to that avatar as myself. But what's going on here? However, it seemed that many avatars I encountered were defined in a few different ways. For example, by the limitations of the technology and the stock avatars provided by the system. That's one way. Another way, by the person's skills, their finances, because there's an economy and you can buy things, or time or interest in enhancing the stock avatars. For some, it seemed like they might have attempted to create the person they wished they were or that they fantasized being, be it suave and debonair, hyper-masculine, which for sure, and hyper-feminine, or everything possible in between, including animals and a combination of that. Identity shifts seem to accompany some of these changes. Now, all this stuff takes place in the sort of main part of Second Life. But there's another part that's for nonprofits and educational institutions. The world of Second Life is created by its residents, but not all residents are creators. There's a function economy with its own with its own currency, and you can buy things in stores. I lost my place. You can buy things in stores, in the marketplace, in the virtual world, and things like clothing, avatar enhancements, accessories, houses, cars, boats, planes, all those things. So the same range of goods can also be found because there's a collaborative atmosphere there, or a part of that world, for free through skill exchanges. Roughly, there's 800 to 900,000 users in the world registered. Between 35 and 45,000 would be in world at any given time. As you might have guessed, and I found out later on in my journey, there's been a lot of academic ink from a variety of disciplines spilled over some of these issues. In case anyone is interested, one of the more respected journals that I know of in the field is the Journal of Virtual Worlds Research. There's churches, live music, ballrooms, dancing, art galleries, temples, mosques, and gatherings from every religion, including Buddhist centers and philosophy houses. All of this, the world of Second Life is a world. The more I discovered, my awareness of the potential for education grew. The feeling of presence, the fluidity of identity, and the ability to transport oneself to the past, present, or future motivated me to construct a 3D educational site designed to meet the needs of marginalized urban indigenous youth. My naive enthusiasm was paired with a low skill set in 3D creation. I looked for help by posting on an educational site in Second Life. The avatar, Artier Olivia, responded to the post, and after an introduction to the project, she agreed to help me develop my 3D building skill. I raised some financing from a tech company, produced a large virtual independent island that could be access controlled and separated from the general population. There's very tight controls on these things. Then I was set to learn 3D building skills. It was like being a carpenter again, only without getting slivers. The motivating factor for Artier was her sense of social justice and her understanding of the project's intended purpose of providing educational opportunities and career planning for marginalized youth. With Artier's help, the first building was constructed. It was a virtual representation of the youth school and the physical world. The school is intended to be a familiar place in an unfamiliar landscape. I gained confidence in my smattering of basic skills from her tutoring and from a site that taught building skills in Second Life. Now I need to do a different screen share. So I'm going to fumble a bit while I figure that out and get this thing back again. Can I do so? What I need to enlarge this so that I can see the screen share. Oh, there we go. I'll stop screen share and then I can start screen share again. I think that's what I have to do. So there we go. So there's running water outside, so it's gonna. I can't do much about that. So I began to construct. Well, art. This is the school that art built. Maybe we'll just talk about that. And most of this is taken from our old school before we had the new building. And over here is, I can actually, one thing about this world, you can have good control because you can make it day or night or whatever you want. So there's this mirror on the wall was, Arabia, you may recognize this mirror, mural, I should say. And a group, an NGO from, brought a group from Nicaragua, from favela in Nicaragua to work with us, and we had a 2-day arts jam. We used photography, poetry, drama, and visual arts to explore the theme of equality and how could we go from a negative part of our community to the positive. So you can see the pieces where we all end up dancing around the inner city because we overcome our problems through art. Now, and then, we'll walk outside here and I can talk a bit. This avatar, by the way, is a stock avatar, but I got cleaned up for today. I got a new hoodie so that I look nice for you. Now, I began to build the 3 buildings on here. I thought I had enough skill, and I built these 3 buildings that are kind of resemble 3 of the post-secondary institutions in Edmonton, where I'm from. Now I better get back to my place here. So after which is built, we quickly brought some youth in, and the idea was that I put posters inside these buildings, and you click on the poster, and out comes, and the posters are careers associated with the particular institution. So the idea was the youth come in, they click on the poster showing the career, and then there's a list of the the required education level for entry into that career, plus a day in the life, entry wage. And the idea was that the youth would see that they can actually do this. I also placed some toys around, like a helicopter up in that roof, a car, and a few things to add to a little enjoyment as well as the career search. They flew around, they smashed into each other, and then they got bored and they left. So I had to go back to the drawing board. So what we did then was, I'm just skipping down here. So I tried to figure out what to do. By this time, I discovered that my brilliant idea of education in the virtual world, where I thought I was alone, was also shared by hundreds of other people years before us. And there was a place called the Nonprofit Commons. I'm just gonna maybe cut some of this short. There's a place called the Nonprofit Commons where nonprofit groups and universities and other kind of organizations, like for one thing, there's university campuses there. There's all kinds of social agencies from every kind of program you can imagine. And the island is hosted by TechSoup, which is a technology company that kind of collects donations from all technology groups, software, hardware, and distributes them to nonprofit organizations for very little money. So, but here I was, here, and the failure of my plans And I thought, I remembered the words of Joe Cloutier, who's at, well, like maybe I better say about the time here. In this world, these post-secondary institutions and where we're going to go next, we're all located in Treaty 6 territory. Virtually or not, we're sitting right here. It's Treaty 6 territory of the Métis and the Cree people. So while I'm working, I remembered reading the words of Joe Cloutier, Cree elder, medicine man, and a tireless activist for the education of Indigenous people. He wrote, by becoming fully aware of their historical conditions, present circumstances, and political forces at play, Indigenous people are able to realize that they have the power to change their situation. In addition, Cloutier explained, curriculum delivery must reflect the primary traditional learning mode of Indigenous people, which is one of experiential learning. So with that in mind, I bought another island. And so when you buy these places, like this is not bought like this, all these things are built on here. And it's actually a piece of flat digital dirt. And we will go to that next place there. You can also do magic here, and that's what we're going to do right now. And I'm doing more magic than I would normally because of the time constraints. So I bought the island. It was a flat, and I began to landscape it. Many of the things in this island were purchased at various Second Life sites, customized and designed to fit my impression of what this part of Alberta may have looked like in 1762. The island is called Negantepec, which in Cree means look to the future. I offered tobacco, and Negantepec was toured and approved by two different elders sitting beside me as we explored the island. You can see the vegetation, there's birds singing, there's some eagles flying up there. And in the first design, the objective was for the youth to explore the island, ride horses, and gather cultural information and be proud of their heritage. And I can see by the time I got to be quick here. So to do that, I placed the information around different parts of traditional culture. So the same thing, they came on, they rode the horses and didn't much look at the posters. And again, I was stopped, another kind of block. So I researched and I learned more. And as I did, I discovered that I could get some pedagogical agents. So what I did was I rode on my horse, and I got set up so we could don't get lost, Joe. And we created 3 pedagogical agents here, and they are, and you go up to the participant person that's in the world, goes up to the pedagogical agent. The agent greets them. As you can say, he's saying hello in Cree, asks me why I've come. I ask him the trigger word. With the trigger word, he gives me a clue to where I can find the next agent. And he gives me an image sorted with colonialism. So then there's 3 different agents. And we go around to each of the agents and we collect the information. Then we come back to that fire, which I'm short-circuiting a lot of this. We come back to that fire and we gather around the fire and we use our images to create a collage of colonialism. And so it takes a bit of skill to put these on the board, but we all talk about it, and I place them in the order that I was directed. And these are passes so that the people can leave the reservation. They need government approval. This, as you can see, is from a residential school, and the children of St. Michael's were stripped of their language, home, and parental love. On this occasion, they're literally stripped and exposed, forced to enact a racist caricature of their own identity. So, and there's other things, so I won't go into this, but it tells the story of colonialism. And we go up into the wormhole, which I don't think I'm going to have time to do. So I'm going to go quickly around here. So we set this up and we worked with the teachers and came back. And the idea was to deepen the teachers' understanding of colonialism, and also as a pilot project for running students through. We discovered quickly that we needed to have a presence. So with that, I bought another island and built the present. And this represents, if we get there, oh no, sometimes these things don't work. Don't please work. So this is called Boyle Street, and this is inner city Edmonton, and it's constructed to represent the place where the youth live. It's reminiscent of our area. There's a 7-Eleven there, which is familiar to everyone. Tim Hortons up the street, but most importantly, and I am I on the right street? Yeah, I'm going to run because it's getting late here. Most importantly, here is Boyle Street High School. And inside this high school are 3 pedagogical agents that give the youth a quest. And the 3 agents represent the 3 grades that it takes to get out of high school. And so each agent gives the youth an assignment, and it's a quest, and they've got to complete that. So when they complete the 3, and you can see the one agent in here, when they complete the 3, and you can also see that even Orwell had things figured out for this time in North America. So after they complete the 3, they receive the key to the future, and they get to go back to the career choice. So now we have the past, we have the present, and we have the future. And I'm going to skip way back because golly, did I ever hop through this. And so the idea is that they go to the past, they understand what created the future, what kind of the elements and political elements created the future, or created the present, I should say. So they see from the past what created the present. They go to the present and they have to find a way, and it's similar to the issues that have been presented before. They needed to find a way to escape from this present because it's pulling them down. It's full of drugs, it's full of alcohol, it's full of, they're survivors, so it's full of violence. And how do you survive? They're adapted, their language is adapted, their actions are adapted, their responses are adapted, but it's a dead end. They need to find a way to get out of here and get to the future. Choose something from those careers, be it a lawyer to help them, their own people, be it a trade, be it a career in the arts, something along those lines. So in this way, so let's see, I'm just trying to catch myself up here because I skipped tons of it here. The goal here is to help the youth develop, okay. So yeah, so they are, in this way, the project is intended to counter the way the youth think of and how they see themselves as intimately related to their historical circumstances and social context as oppressed second-class citizens. The skills youth learn to adapt to such environments are the same skills that trap them in the environment. They are adapted, but not fully aware of the oppression. In the virtual world, marginalized Indigenous youth are able to deconstruct the past and learn how events of the past created their present. They construct their own understanding of these historical events and build on knowledge embedded in their culture. The goal is to help the youth develop the tools and skills to make their way through the current system with tools that they can use to improve the conditions of their lives, to enact change in a systemically unjust system. The project is driven by pedagogies of hope and emancipation. It involves more than revealing the tentacles of power and the structures of oppression. Participants are able to construct their own knowledge through exploration, action, reflection, and discussion in the virtual world. Knowledge that is directly related to situations in the participants' physical world. In this critical education virtual world project, a pedagogy of hope and emancipation is a pedagogy of self-emancipation. As Paulo Freire would put it, immersed in the reality of their small world, they were unable to see it. By taking some distance, they emerged and were thus able to see it as they never had before. The program continues to develop with new plans and works with thoughts of other islands. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Joe. That was fascinating. I really appreciate this virtual creativity. I'm going to start with a question for you. We have about 20 minutes for questions. And my question comes from something that Sarah Ahmed said in Living a Feminist Life. She said that so much is reproduced by not noticing. And I'm just going to throw this question out about using the word pedagogical agent and
yes.
how that word is connected to Indian agent and the trauma and genocide connected with it, and why that was chosen.
Well, actually, I only recently changed it to pedagogical agent. I didn't change it for any reason other than but I've never thought of that actually. I used to call them non-player characters, but it's not actually true because they are playing. But I never thought of that. I just chose it because that was, instead of non-player characters, that was the agent that was delivering the pedagogy. I had no connection to Indian agent whatsoever in my thoughts.
Thank you for your answer. There's another question for you. I think there are several.
Okay.
So I'll just continue. Sorry, the chat moves.
Yeah.
From Simone, question from Simone. Will what you have created be available to other educators working in inner schools?
Well, yeah, it is, yes. And if I had more time, I would have taken you to the nonprofit island, where now, and it wasn't before, there's a whole section with tutorials for teachers. And I mean, there's a fairly steep learning curve, but they had like 5 sections starting from the very beginning, moving all the way up to developing lesson plans, and then getting at the talk was the technical management of those lands, because they do need to be managed in a sense. So there is instruction on the nonprofit island.
Okay, thank you. And there are quite a few questions. This is from Shauna. Joe, what an amazing virtual program. Do you have discussions after they work in this virtual format? You mentioned that people sometimes feel less shy to interact in virtual format. Can you discuss a bit more how this emboldenment assists interactions with the students or between students or their growth in the learning process?
Well, I'd like to say they're so wonderful. It just went crazy and they're all just doing so well now. But there's a couple of issues that we're faced with this. One is that it's developed in pieces. First, there was the future, then there was the past, then the present was moved in. So, and the youth have come on at different stages in different parts. And so they have been engaged in the parts that they were in, and I think they feel good about who they are. I think they're able to see themselves in their world, but there has not been a youth completely through the cycle yet. So we have one group of teachers through, and there'll be another one coming soon, which is just as valuable. in understanding. But COVID has set this back for sure. Plus, for participants, there's a fairly steep learning curve to get over. So, but they do manage that. They do that fairly quickly. But the other thing is that this is such a mobile population that sometimes it's just hard to hang on to somebody all the way through. But we're still working at it. And I think, and anyone that's been on there are engaged and are enthused about it.
Thank you very much, Joe. I'm also going to encourage anyone who has a question to put their hand up. I'm going to try to find where that is, but that was something that someone mentioned to me, that if you would just like to ask a question, please go ahead. I have another question here for Luis, if I can find it. And yes, for Luis, do you think the cycle of influence can be completely broken? Can you offer some examples of how you or your students break that cycle? This is a question from Shauna.
And I think it's a great question. I'm going to speak from my experience and my student experience in this process. There is a moment when I used to say, jump out or break the circle and get out of it. But the process of socialization that we were subjected through our life, it still keeps you with some of those biases, prejudices, very deep-rooted in your heart, that you are not continue doing the self-inventory or the cycle of socialization again and again. They are coming out with you without you noticing. Because this cycle of socialization of what Gramsci called the inventory is not done once and forever. It's a kind of dialectic process that needs to be being done constantly in your life. One example that I have, and that happened to me in my personal experience, working with some ladies after one company from the Levi's was closed in San Antonio some years ago. It was 2005, 2006. And the ladies invited me after working with them for a week to a center that they call Our Heaven. And and we were listening to music. There was a lady playing beautiful songs, very social-oriented songs. I was enjoying it. And suddenly I noticed that I was in the middle of a crowd. It was packed, the place was packed, of couples of gays and lesbians, hugging and kissing each other and singing and doing all the movements. And let me tell you something weird that happened to me. Just 3 minutes went through my mind, and I was thinking, what am I doing here? The issue of seeing the couple, real people, holding and kissing each other, went back to my rooted machismo piece in my heart. And I noticed it, I identified it immediately, and I started working. I said, in terms of like a joke, you are older, you are ugly, you are, who's gonna pay attention to you? You know, I was joking with myself, but I regained again my consciousness, because if those deep marks in our heart stay for many times, many years, we need to be working again and again the self-inventory. One of my colleagues was teaching multicultural ed class, and we were in New Orleans, and we took a bus from the hotel that we rented to the convention center that we were having the conference. And she was Hispanic, she was a Chicana lady. And we were talking and laughing and talking about the presentation that we attended the day before. And suddenly I saw her taking out her necklace, the ears. And I say, what's happening? And she said, don't you see? And I say, what? And she said, look at the bus. And then I started looking around. All the bus was used by Black people. And I said, so what? And she said, don't you see? They all are Black. And I said, you know, lady, you need to rethink if you are ready to continue teaching multicultural education. Because she was a multicultural educator and her biases about Black people made her to connect immediately that she was about to be robbed. That is why she take out the golden necklace and the earring pieces. And I said, you need to think seriously about this, because it's not just speaking out, it's acting out too. So even though she had been, at that time, she had been teaching for, I don't know, 10 years, she questioned herself so hard that she quit the teaching. She couldn't deal with the issue of the rooted prejudice that she still was holding unconsciously in her heart. That is why my response is, maybe it's not totally broken at once. We need to continue breaking it up once and again and again and again. It's a not ending process, because every day we receive more information, we enter in contact with different people. And if we are not sure about our way of seeing the world, where are we standing on, we need to go back and redo our self-inventory again.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you so much. A praxis. It is a praxis.
Yes.
And I'm going to move on to a question for Urvashi. And this question comes from Ashima, I believe. Let me find it now. I've lost it. Oh dear, I'm sorry. I hate to take your precious time, Urvashi. I want to hear you speak. Oh, from Ashima. To everyone. Urvashi, your presentation brought tears to my eyes. Being brought up in UP and seeing this all my life, and your beautiful work, solidarity and love. One question: how to reach communities and schools to have these radical dialogues? How can we reach further?
Yeah. So thank you for that question. You know, what we have been doing is that we have been training teachers, and we've done that in over 1,000 schools now in very remote villages in UP. We're trying to teach them critical feminist pedagogy. Most of them, they are about 100% of them women. And so they get it very quickly. It is about gender equality, they understand it. And we do it by actually engaging in critical dialogues with them, and so that they begin to understand how gender has circumscribed and impacted their own lives. For the first time, they begin to see it really. They haven't seen it so far, they've just lived it. And then they see how important it is. And we also we do interventions virtually as well, and we go there. In fact, you know, Joe, your presentation was so fascinating, but during COVID time, we found that our bond with the teachers has become stronger, not weaker, because they have reached out a lot. We use videos, we send them, and we've been engaging in virtual critical dialogues with them as well. So in terms of how do we reach other schools, we reach them through the teachers, teaching them, first of all, about critical pedagogy, what it means, and then secondly, helping them enlarge their role so that they learn to become advocates for the girls that they teach, along with teaching girls to develop a voice and become self-advocates. So they become the intermediaries with the communities that they're serving, the parent communities. Right? So we are trying to replicate what we are doing through the teachers. And as I mentioned, that we have this very large India's Daughters campaign. And why I'm mentioning that is, you know, Jagat will appreciate this, of course, that we actually encourage our students and our teachers to march in the village. They march in the village, they have slogans, they do street plays, they do signature pledges, all in the attempt to get the parents to start thinking about these issues. They take one issue, it's child marriage. This time it's boys, India's sons. What can you do to make India safe for her daughters? That's our campaign. And the students themselves, the girls said, you know, I could never believe that I would speak in the community and people would actually listen to me. Actually stop and listen. It's very empowering. Just the act of marching is very empowering. And when people listen, I was at one of their marches and there was a rickshaw puller. He was watching the play and I heard him as an aside talking to someone saying, you know, oh, this is the only thing that will change the world. Saying that. So, you know, he seemed to be participating and he realized this was political work. What we were doing was not just taking a play. We were trying to effect a change. And he seemed to get that immediately. But again, to tell you that I'm not minimizing the challenge, as I mentioned, this is centuries old. And it's going to take a long time to deconstruct. And it has to become a movement, which is what we are trying to do. But patriarchy, once again, it's so part of the whole social structure. Everybody's living in that how do they learn to get out of it and look at it? You know, that this is wrong, that this is wrong. For example, I'll tell you now with all these rapes, etc. The chief minister has today, just at 4 o'clock, there was a Zoom where he's saying, oh, we should be talking about women's safety. And once again, look how they're couching it. We must protect the honor of our mothers and sisters. And so women's safety, again, they're trying to couch it in terms of honor. Even that is all couched in very patriarchal language, which to call them out, which we're doing. So we don't lose any opportunity and we are doing, it's really person by person. It's, you know, in Hindi, there's the term deep se deep chale, that you keep passing the lamp on, keep lighting the lamp and lighting another, and the person is building a chain movement. I don't know if that helped.
Thank you so much, Urvashi. And on that note, as we're passing on, we have to slowly wind down, but we have a few minutes. I wonder if each one of you, you've been extraordinary panelists, if you could leave us with one brief thought to conclude. Joe.
Well, I think I would like to underline Luis's comment about the continual reevaluation of where we sit in the cycle of conscientization. I think it's so easy to just be comfortable with where you are, like, and feel that, and then when we do that, there's the danger is, and it does happen, that you slip back into some version of the process and you're caught in the cycle again. So that continual process of self-evaluation. And the other part is part of the presentation is kind of a Freudian sense of love and understanding of the people that you're working with and the positions that they're in. And I feel that it's our responsibility to do whatever it is we can, because we're placed in a position where we can do that.
Thank you so much. Luis, a final word?
Yeah, I will try to connect my final thought with the title of my presentation, because I call it a path of conscientization. I'm sorry. Because it's a path, it's a journey. I want to invite our colleagues that attended to the presentation that we need to think that it's a journey. It's not the final goal. It's a journey that we need to continue walking through our life.
Thank you so much. Urvashi?
Yes, I really want to add my last word to what Joe and Luis have said, that it's a journey. It's a journey. And as I mentioned earlier, that as educators, I wish we could understand how much power we have. We can be agents of transformation because that's what we do. But I think importantly to recognize how much more deeper that can go and how much more wider that can go if we were to just learn to redefine our own roles. And I think follow the same path of conscientization even in our role as educators. And since this is all about educating for peace, I want to leave the last word for educators. I think when our teachers understand that, it has a very profound influence. And even when our students understand that they can be agents of change. You act upon yourself and then you act upon the world. It just gives them a whole new way of looking at their own education and at themselves.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to just have a few closing remarks, and then we have a 15-minute interlude of music before we continue with our workshops. And we hope you stay with us, of course. So thank you to the entire team in India and the ongoing dedication to educating for peace and justice that is embodied in Ekta Parashad and the Jai Jagat initiative. I want to give my personal thanks to Riva Joshi and Jill Carr-Harris, two women of peace that always remind me that we walk together. This has been an extraordinary panel. Urvashi, Luis, and Joe, you remind us that teaching the grammar of oppression and patriarchy will allow us to break it open. It remains true that we make the road by walking it. And to close with Freire's words, there is no such thing as neutral education. Education either functions as an instrument to bring about conformity or freedom. Thank you so much, everyone.